Hello and welcome back to the Second and Two podcast. I'm your host, TB. I got my co-host, producer extraordinaire, connoisseur of nice hats, my guy, Jodye. What's up, Joe?
What's good? What's good? How you been? Good to be back. I'll tell you that for me.
Facts. Yeah, I'm good. You know, school's out for the summer, so don't have a lot of worries right now. You know, this is the part of the year where everyone goes, "Oh, you're so lucky you're a teacher."
Like, you get 3 months off.
tell me that in October when you're talking about dealing with your kids and how you can't imagine how I do it every day. And it's like, yeah, thank you. Those are your two things when you're a teacher. That's the two things that you get. Either you're so lucky or I don't know how you do it. And it just depends on the time of year that you're in. So, but yeah, I'm good. Ready to talk some football for sure.
Yeah, let's see. Today we're going to be looking at the NFC East. Do you have any thoughts before we get into the breakdown of each team? Of when you're looking these over?
You know, I got some good stuff for you right now. Yeah, man. So looking at some interesting tidbits in the division. They've had 3 different division winners each of the last 3 years. In 2020, at the time they were called the Washington Football Team, but the Commanders won it. In 2021, the Cowboys won it. And then this last year in 2022, the Eagles won it. And the last time the Giants won it was 2011 when they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Patriots. But this division has not had someone win it 2 consecutive years in a row since the Eagles won it from 01 to 04. So it changes hands every year since 2004. So if that tells you anything, it tells you the Eagles are not winning the division again this year. So anyone who's like, you know, thinking about, who might win the division and feeling like the Eagles are a safe bet, as much as I like the Eagles, maybe they aren't. And we'll look at that today and talk about kind of what happened with the Eagles roster and how we each see it. But yeah, I think that's an interesting tidbit. Also, something I noticed, this division is one of the only divisions in the NFL that's had every team in it win a Super Bowl since 1991. The Commanders won it in 91. The Cowboys.
Well, I don't think the Commanders won. I'll tell you that.
Well, we're staying away from that, from the old team name. The Cowboys won it in 95. The Giants won it in 11. And the Eagles won it in 2017. And I said earlier, when the last time the division, the Giants won the division in 2011 was when they lost the Super Bowl with the Patriots. But they actually beat the Patriots. I was messed that up. I'm sure a lot of Patriots fans would easily correct me. The Giants beat them twice, 07 and 11. But yeah, that was the last Giants Super Bowl win. And then obviously the Eagles also beating the Patriots. The NFC East sort of owns the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Just.
Or was that Tom Brady? I mean,
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, all 4 teams have won it since 91. So that's interesting. In 4 of the last 7 years, the division has had at least 2 playoff teams, including the last 2 seasons. Also, something interesting, I noticed their wild card teams have gone 6-6 in that road wild card game since 2005. And every team in the division has won a road game as a wild card at least once since 05. So they're really good as a wild card entrant. You know, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You think about some of the runs that each of these teams have made as a wild card, and especially the Giants, they were kind of famous for that with Eli. The Eagles have had a couple runs like that. The Cowboys have done it once or twice. So each of these teams has been good, has been dangerous as a wild card. So just keep that in mind this year. I mean, even the Giants last year won a road game as a wild card. So something to keep in mind when we get to the playoffs and start thinking about these teams. And yeah, that was it for the division as a whole. I mean, as I said, it seems to be a new team wins it every year since 04. So we I don't give anything away in terms of who we might, predict will win this division, but might be something for you and I to think about before we do our official preseason predictions in September. Just the thing to keep on your mind when you go to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will say, I don't know if we'll be seeing anyone new anytime soon, but that's just a wild prediction going forward.
Ooh. Jody says he really likes the Eagles.
Yeah, that's for sure. Especially, I mean, they paid my guy. I mean, that's jumping ahead a couple teams, but they gave the guy some money.
True, they did. But we'll get to the Eagles. I think we're starting with the Giants.
Yeah, so the Giants last year they went 9-7. They finished third overall in the division, which also let them get into the playoffs, and they lost that first round.
They lost in the divisional round.
Divisional, my bad.
Second
round. Yeah, I should have known that. Oh well.
They beat the Vikings in the wild card, and they got thrashed by the Eagles. But they had some key losses in the offseason. They lost safety Julian Love. They lost their center Nick Gates, who actually went to another team in the division. Receiver Kenny Golladay, a guy who they were paying a lot but did not give them a lot of production.
Yeah.
So some may look at that as more of a positive loss, I guess, addition by subtraction. But just in terms of what they were paying him and the
output they got from him.
Yeah. And then also Landon Collins is also gone. So the safety spot is going to look really different for them this year. They made some key additions, though. Bringing in Darren Waller, trading for Darren Waller was a big deal. They brought in Bobby Okereke. They signed Ashawn Robinson, and they also signed Paris Campbell. Could be some interesting additions of, three guys who figure to, or at least three guys who will figure to start for them, and maybe even four right there between all four of those guys could be starters this year. In the draft, they added cornerback Deontay Banks, a new center in the second round, John Michael Schmitz, and then also a receiver, Jalen Hyatt. So 3 pretty good picks. I think widely considered all 3 guys will start for them and be significant contributors.
Yeah, I don't know much about the first 2, the corner Deontay Banks or the center, but I know Jalen Hyatt was at Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that works out. I mean, they definitely need receivers.
I'll tell you, John Michael Schmitz was my favorite center in the draft. I know we didn't actually end up doing it interior offensive line. I mean, this was a tough interior offensive line draft, to be quite frank. That's part of why we chose not to do that. But I actually really did like him. Of all of the guys who in interior offensive line this draft, I think he was probably the best one. So that's a definite positive for them.
Yeah. Let's see, the coaching staff and manager they got here in the New York, I guess, if you want to call it that. They got the general manager being Joe, was that Schoen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Joe Schoen. Let's see, their head coach is Brian Dable, or Dabble, as people like to call him. Well, former coach of the year, right? That's who that is?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, put some respect on his name. Let's see, their offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka.
Yep.
This is a tough coaching staff to pronounce. People looking at it for the first time. And let's see, their defensive coordinator, they got Don Martindale. Don, bro.
Yeah.
Why can't they all be so simple like that one?
Don Wink Martindale, my guy. Yeah, my guy who loves to bring pressure, but then didn't against the Vikings and just totally switched it up on him in the playoff game. I loved that. If you look across their offense, in terms of their projected starters, the young kid John Michael Schmitz figures to come in and start right away at center. At left guard, they have Ben Bredesen. Left tackle Andrew Thomas, who's been there for a little bit, done a really good job for them. The right guard spot, they got a couple guys. It looks like Mark Lewinsky will probably start, but Shane Lemieux is another guy who's gives them a little bit of depth. And then at right tackle, Evan Neal. The skill position is a spot that it was clear the Giants figured they needed to upgrade in the offseason. They added Hyatt in the draft, Campbell in free agency, traded for Waller. They bring back Slayton, the guy who was actually probably their best receiver last year. So they definitely have more depth this year at that X receiver spot. They have Jalen Hyatt, and then they also bring back Isaiah Hodgins, who developed some chemistry with Daniel Jones. At the tight end, Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger. At the slot, Paris Campbell, and then the guy they drafted last year, Wan'Dale Robinson, who was not bad, could do some stuff for him. And then at the Z spot, Darius Slayton, and then they still also have Sterling Shepard, who is like the last remains of the yacht picture squad from what was that, 2016?
From when OBJ was there?
Yeah, man. I think that was Sterling Shepard's rookie year, so it's crazy. He's been on that team for like 7 years now, but he's been hurt for a lot of the last few years, and so if he can come back healthy, that gives him some decent depth at the receiver spot. At quarterback, they signed Daniel Jones to the pretty big contract this offseason, and then not talked about a lot, but they brought in an experienced veteran who knows Brian Daboll's system, and that is Tyrod Taylor. Yes, it's Tyrod, not Tyrod. He's very specific about that. Tyrod Taylor, to be his backup, who I think he can do a lot of stuff for Brian Daboll if needed, if anything ever happened to Daniel Jones. Then Saquon Barkley and Matt Breida at the running back spots, assuming Barkley signs his free agent or his franchise tender and shows up and all that good stuff. We'll see if they can get a deal worked out with him before the season. I know they want to, but we'll probably be tough.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was about to ask that same question.
I think the assumption is he'll play regardless, but he's
just going to hold out till season starts or something.
He's going to try and go through a good chunk of training camp without showing. It seems like so. We'll see if he shows up at the beginning of camp or if he kind of shows up in the middle of camp. I'm not sure what he'll do. At the edge spots on defense, at the edge spots, they got Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau, guys who were both pretty good for them last year. Also have Jihad Ward as a backup, giving them some depth up front. In the interior defensive line, they have Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and A'Shawn Robinson. I really like those three interior D linemen, all the guys who are all big and physical, give them a lot up front. In the linebacker spots, they signed Bobby Okereke to play that will linebacker next to Gerard Davis. Figure to be a pretty good combo of linebackers there. And then in the nickel corner, they have Darnay Holmes. Secondary should look kind of different for the Giants this year. I do like Deonte Banks and Adoree Jackson as the corners. Also at safety, Xavier McKinney is coming back for him this year. Figures to play a much bigger role. And then they've got a little bit of an interesting position battle at the free safety spot with Jason Pinnock and Bobby McCain battling for that last starting spot on defense. I assume it's going to be Pinnock, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, I got a quick question. It might be a dumb one. But what would be the difference between the Mike and Will? Is it just right and left, strong side, weak side? How would you describe that?
Every defense functions differently. I mean, old school defenses, you had the Mike, Will, and the Sam, and some defenses still play that way. You see so much more nickel stuff that you'll notice. Defenses are all structured differently, but at the end of the day, you can kind of boil them down to what I've done with these depth charts, which is like you're going to have two edge players. You're going to have probably two interior players. You're going to have a Will and a Mike, and then you're probably going to have 5 DBs. That's generally just how it goes nowadays. Yeah. They're still like true odd fronts, and they'll play with more like 3 interior guys, 2 edges, and maybe 2 real backers, that kind of thing. But really the biggest difference, so like the difference in the Will and the Mike, 1 depends on the structure of your defense, but 2, in general, your Will is more like your weak side linebacker, which is why he's called the Will, and the Mike is that middle linebacker, which is why he's called the Mike. Again, the Mike and Will nowadays, your defenses are all structured differently, so it doesn't always work like that for every single defense, but traditionally that's kind of how it works. So, yeah,
that makes sense. I've always wondered why, because like obviously the M makes a lot of sense for the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but like you said, you brought up the Sam. I was like, yeah. I mean, now that I think about it, each first letter, side. Yeah. But if you're just throwing them out, I was always just like, what's the difference? Like, Like I feel like we always hear the quarterback going like, "Oh, 54 is the mic or whatever," but like
Yeah. Well,
outside of that,
and
like they don't never really call anything else, you know?
yeah, I mean, what they're doing is functionally different. Like nowadays, your mic probably plays in more space. Used to be like your Sam was the one who was going to play in more space. Now it's more or less your mic, the way football's played, and your Will, again, generally is going to end up being in that boundary. And so he plays with less field. He doesn't have to play in as much space.
Uh-huh.
But, I mean, they all play on islands now, the way
Yeah,
offenses
that's
run.
true.
That's why so many teams play with that fifth DB, that nickel guy, as
Uh-huh.
opposed to a third true linebacker. So yeah, I mean it's there's like slight differences. Mostly they're similar, is what I would say.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I hope y'all learned something because I
Yeah.
did. But let's look at their schedule going ahead. So week 1 playing Sunday night against the Cowboys. So right off the bat, they got that divisional game. Then they travel for a couple of weeks. They got the Cardinals, and then the Niners on a Thursday game, week 3, and that'll be interesting. That'll be tough for them, especially in the Bay. And week 4, then they got another primetime game. They're playing the Seahawks at home. On the road again for a couple games versus the Dolphins and then the Bills. So couple AFC East teams right there. And that Bills one's going to be on a Sunday night, week 6. Let's see, they got a couple home games here. They got the Commanders at home, and then the divisional game right there. And then they got the Jets as well. So 7 and 8, they're at home. Then they're on the road for 3 weeks. They got the Raiders week 9. Couple more divisional games on the road. They got the Cowboys and then the Commanders. That's tough. You're gonna be 3 weeks in a row on a road, and then they go back home and play the Patriots. Patriots gonna be coming off a bye right there in
Mm-hmm.
week 12, and then that leads to their bye week 13. Kind of tough. That's a little late, but I guess better late than never, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, week 14 they got a Monday night game versus the Packers. That could be fun. Maybe Jordan Love figures something out by then. Could be a good game. Let's see, week 15 they got the Saints on the road. And then they travel again versus the Eagles on a Monday night game. I guess that's Christmas. That's what that
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
There you
The
go.
Christmas Day games.
And then they finish at home the last 2 weeks. They got the Rams and then the Eagles.
Yeah, I would say in general the Giants have one of the tougher schedules we've looked at so far. A couple reasons being, one, they have to play 2 teams coming off byes, and both those teams
Oh, I didn't even realize the
are
Jets right there.
both those teams are either, I think both teams are actually really well coached and
Uh-huh.
also have sufficient talent to like make those bye weeks count. That's tough on them. They also play 9 road games in the first 16 weeks.
Yeah,
That's
that's tough.
brutal. That's super brutal. I mean, you see they have a stretch of 3 straight road games. They have a stretch of 4 and 5 weeks, which if you're playing 4 road games in 5 weeks, that
You
1
ain't got
week at
no time to
home,
rest.
yeah, it's like I'm on the road, then I'm on the road, then I'm on the road just going back home, then I'm
Yeah.
back out on the road, right? I mean, that's a brutal stretch right there for them. And then again, after that, then you still get the 2 teams coming off byes, right? You
Yeah.
have 2 teams coming off byes sandwiched in outside between 3 straight road games. I mean,
Yeah. Oof.
they're realistically going to be limping into the bye week. I would assume that's a brutal stretch, and then having to play the Eagles 2 out of their last 3 games, I think is rough too. They have a lot of primetime solo games, right? They have 5 true
Yeah.
primetime games plus the Christmas Day game. So the Giants' schedule is really hard, dude. Really hard. Like I had a tough time picking out the tough stretch
Uh-huh.
just because I
Just there's
think
so much going on.
there's so much going on. But I think if I had to pick out and isolate one, it's weeks 2 through 6. I mean, just
Yeah.
right out of the
I would
gate,
agree.
they got to play at the Cardinals, at the Niners, versus the Seahawks, at the Dolphins, at the Bills. Again, 4 road games in 5 weeks is why I picked that. And even if you want to add week 1 against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, then even still
Yeah.
4 road games in 6 weeks against what figure to be at least 5 really good opponents. The one team in there in that group that may not be as good this year are the Cardinals, But I would anticipate and expect the Cowboys, 49ers, Seahawks, Dolphins, and Bills to all be, if not fringe playoff teams, legitimate playoff teams. All of those teams were playoff teams the year before.
Okay, that's what I was about to say.
And so it's a really tough stretch. I can honestly see them going like 1-4, or I guess I should say 1-5, 2-4 in the first 6 weeks of the season. You know, I mean, they could get off to a really tough start here. Now, the good news for them is, I do think those couple games against the Commanders are very winnable. We'll see what the Packers look like with Jordan Love. We'll very interested to see what the Rams look like this year. Getting Matthew Stafford back, but losing a lot on defense. The Raiders could be a very winnable game for them, despite it being on the road. So we'll see. There are some games in there that you figure they should be able to pick up, and it's not like they were a bad team last year. They were a team that made it to the second round of the playoffs, so they're a good team. So I think if I were to point out the stretch that I like, that's most favorable to them, probably weeks 11 through 15. They get to go at the Commanders. They do get that Patriots team coming off a bye, but I told you I thought the Patriots are about an 8-9, kind of semi-500 football team. So even though they're coming off the bye, it's a team that I think the Giants have a good shot at being able to beat. Again, you get the bye week. Then you get to play the Packers on Monday Night Football. I think that's a great spot for the Giants. You get them at home. And then at the Saints, again, another tough opponent on the road. But I think having had the bye week and the home game the week before, all that good stuff, I think they still have a reasonably good shot at winning that game. So that's probably that stretch, weeks 11 through 15, where I feel like they have a good shot at winning all 4 of those games. But this is a tough schedule. I mean,
I agree with that.
They play 2 teams, like I said, they have to play 2 teams coming off the byes. They have the AFC East, which is a good division. They have the NFC West, which is a good division. And then their own division is very difficult as well. Yeah. I mean, when you put that all together, they just have a brutal schedule. There's no other bones about it. It's tough.
Yeah. So, what do you think they end up going after this hard schedule of a year?
Well, I think there's going to be – last year, they were one of the best teams in football at winning those one-score games. And we just generally see regression to the mean when that happens. They were a 9-7-1 football team. I don't think that was fake. I don't think the playoff one was fake. I think they have a formula that works for them offensively with Brian Daboll. I think he really has figured some stuff out with Daniel Jones. They've given him more weapons this year. They're better up front. I love Saquon. So I think offensively, they should be just as good, maybe better. Defensively, I think maybe a little bit worse. I don't know that I think they upgraded defensively the way that they did offensively. Some of their losses in the secondary are tough. But I also just think there's a natural regression to the mean. I think they play a much harder schedule this year. And I think in general, they're right around that 500. So I think I ended up going, I went 8-9 with them simply because the schedule is just so brutal.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if there's a little bit of, despite having more weapons around him, how good Daniel Jones will be again, second year in the system. I am curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I had them, I guess, technically improving. They get rid of that law or the tie column. I went them going 10-7. I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, the division's tough within itself. The other divisions they're playing are kind of hard as well. And I mean, I see them probably splitting maybe most of the games in their division. Maybe they go 4-4 there. And then we got the Raiders. I don't know if you've seen, but Jimmy G might not even make the team, I guess, because he's not.
There's a lot going on with that Raiders football team right now. It's not good.
So I mean, we could probably count that one as a win right there, right? Get them to 5. Let's see. Who else? The Cardinals, 6. Rams possibly, depending how they're doing at week 17. That's 7. 3 more. I mean, we could probably say the Saints maybe. Who knows? Maybe Derek Carr's firing, and he's doing well, so that could be a tough one. I'd probably include the Patriots. I don't know. and then they we'll give them both the Commanders wins, and that gets them to 10. You know what I mean? So I see them. I don't know if you would call it improving or just winning a game that wasn't technically ended. I don't know, but that's how I see them doing this year.
Yeah. That would be that'd be improvement, definitely.
Let's see. I had a question for you about the team. Do you think Daniel Jones could either continue how well he played last year or improve on that, or do you think that was just like a fluke in a sense and that was just one time?
Well, I'll start by saying this. I do think what he's getting paid is outrageous, considering the production. However, it is just the way that the quarterback market works, and I understand why the Giants did it, and I don't necessarily think they're wrong. It's a weird thing. I could sit here and tell you that it's outrageous, but I also don't know if they're wrong. That, I don't know how else to put it. I don't know that I would say he's a one-hit wonder, but I also don't know that you're winning a Super Bowl with this guy. I mean, it's hard to say like, hey, we're going to pay this guy $40 million, but we don't feel like we can win a Super Bowl with it. And I'm sure in the building, they would look at me and be like, you don't know him. You're not in the building every day. You're an idiot, which is totally fair, right? We're not paying him $40 million without thinking that we could win a Super Bowl with him, of course, right? So I'm sure they think they can if they put the right team around him. And I do think they took steps in the right direction in doing that with the skill players they added. So I think there's a natural tendency and sense to be like, well, the team around him is better. He should be better, right? Last year, he completed 67% of his passes. He threw for 3,205 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He had 120 rushing attempts for 708 yards, 7 touchdowns. Everything I just named for you was a career high, except for the passing touchdowns. His rookie year, he threw 24 touchdowns. Other than that, everything else was a career high. So clearly, Brian Daboll got the best out of him. And I kind of went back and watched some of the film from this last year and tried to figure out, like, what was it that they did, either A, that Daniel Jones just got better at, or B, that Brian Daboll brought that made Daniel Jones better, right, compared to what he had done in the previous couple years. One thing that I would say is you'll see a similar effect with what I talked about with Mac Jones last week, right, which is that the structure of the coaching staff around Daniel Jones the last couple years was not fantastic. And I think when you just bring in competency and consistency and confidence from your staff in terms of philosophy and what you're going to do offensively, there's just a marked difference, right? And that's what Brian Daboll was able to bring. And I think that's why you saw the best of Daniel Jones come out this year. So we'll look at some clips from a couple different games this year. Number one, this was week 3, I think, against the Jaguars. It was early in the season. I can't remember exactly what week, but it was early in the season, right? So you'll see, if you look at the Jags defense, they're given kind of a bluff pressure look. They're going to end up dropping out and only bring in 4. Now, they're showing you 2 high safeties, but what they're going to do is buzz this safety down and end up playing 1 high. Pre-snap, Daniel Jones is looking, and he can see this safety is on the hash. He's not out here. It's a lot harder for him to play out to that receiver when he's this tight inside. He also sees this safety is walking down pre-snap. So you can start to see what they're going to do, right? Boom. So they're going to play 4 under 3 deep, right? You have a thirds player, the middle of the field player, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 underneath players, right? So now they're playing a version of 4 under 3 deep. Daniel Jones goes through his progressions. He knows by the time he gets through it that he's got one-on-one up top, and he finds that matchup and lets it go. Look where he's letting the ball go.
Yeah.
Right. His receiver now, that's open. That's NFL open, right?
Yeah.
He's got a step on him. If I lead him, he should win that foot race, right? And he could have really thrown it either way because he's got it down here too, right? But he throws it up top, one-on-one, trusts his receiver, puts it out there for him. Guy goes and makes a play, touchdown, right? That was Slayton, by the way.
Okay.
So this is the kind of stuff that Daniel Jones did last year that he was not doing in the previous couple of years, right? Going through a progression, you saw it from this angle, the way that he looks the safety middle of he understands he's going to get from 2 high to 1. He's going to look that middle of the field safety off and then get to the throw that he wants where he knows he has one-on-one, right? So he did a great job on that. Now, the next thing that you see, this is some stuff that we saw more last year than we ever seen from him. They're going to bring 6, right, and play man coverage behind it. Well, Daniel Jones feels that, sees it's man coverage, and just says, okay, I can escape. I can use my legs. I'm just going to get out of the pocket. I'm going to go get a first down. Great play. I mean, this is like the extra stuff that he started doing. And I think, again, that was confidence. That was a confidence thing. He had the confidence within the offense to go do that because other things were working, right? And so then it snowballs. Now he's confident enough in himself to go do these things. Breaking arm tackles from defenders, looking like discount Josh Allen out there. Which is not a slight, by the way. I know everyone's maybe going to think that way.
No,
I mean,
just
Josh
the way
Allen,
you said it was funny, though.
Top 5 QB in the league, all right? Daniel Jones, he's not quite there. Now, he's a good player. I do like him, but he's not quite there. So, then this next one, right, this is where now when you start seeing offensive coordinators do stuff like this deeper into a game, or not just OCs, but play callers, right? They have such a good feel for their quarterback and what their team is doing, right? This is where it's just like, oh, this guy's having fun now. Watch this. Pulls out the zone read and lets his quarterback go keep it and go get 10 yards. Right? That's when you know.
Hey, that's a nice looking slide right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dan Jones can work on that. But like you can tell, look at this.
Yeah.
He holds that thing in there just enough for this guy to start chasing down the line. Oh, I'm out the back door. That's when you know Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll are having a good time, right?
Yeah.
So, again, those were 3 plays from the Jaguars game. Here's 3 more clips from the Ravens game. This is another game later in the year. Now it's, again, he's identifying pre-snap. Look at all the defenders near the line of scrimmage. Yeah. This is just going to be man-free. They're going to play 1 high safety. They're going to play man across the board with everyone else, right? He knows he's got something perfect dialed up, all kinds of crossing patterns, right? You'll see all this action in the middle of the field and all these guys trying not to get picked. Look at this guy trying not to get picked. Oh, he accidentally picks his own guy. But Daniel Jones, he's ripping it right now. He knows. He sees his guy coming free and letting it go with anticipation, putting it right on the money. And that's a 15-yard gain, right? Again, see it from this side. This is where you can really see the anticipation going through the progression. I'm looking. I see the middle of the field safety. I'm looking here, seeing it, getting across the middle of the field. I let it go. Great job. I believe that's Isaiah Hodgins, another guy he developed some pretty good chemistry with last year. Here's another play in that Ravens game. I believe this is a play or 2 later. Again, getting through his progression, being confident, understanding he's got zone coverage. He's got to make this layered throw over the backer, but underneath the DB to put it in that window. And he's got a secondary defender over here, so he can't lead him too far. He's got to put it right on that hash over the linebacker under the DB. Boom. Where does he put it? Right on that hash over the linebacker under the DB. Fantastic throw. Again, you see it from this angle. Just so you can kind of see what he sees. Right, they show kind of a bluff pressure look. They bring it, but then they drop a couple guys and then bring a couple other guys, right? Now here's the other thing. He knows this is a D lineman dropping into coverage right here. The way they ran that pressure, which is sick, by the way, from the Ravens. That's fun if you can do stuff like that. Because this D lineman actually gets great depth. You'd think he was a linebacker, right? I wouldn't have known unless the number. But you see how he finds the hole. Too. He finds the hole in the zone and puts it where like in between 1, 2, and 3, right? Yeah. Where only his guy can go get it. That's a great throw. Those are the kind of throws he was just not making. And then here's another one, cap off a touchdown drive, right? Play action, come out the back door. I'm going to take the hit. I'm going to put it right on my guy again, and I'm going to stop him. This is where you know you're really doing something. When you can make throws against the zone where you stop your player, right? If he leads him too far, look who's sitting over here.
Yeah.
Marlon Humphrey, who's a fantastic defensive player, gets a lot of picks, right?
Yeah.
He feels the guy running at him. He feels his guy running free from the defender behind him. So you want to lead him away from that defender, but you don't want to throw him into the next defender so he gets blown up or you throw a pick, right? So I know I've got a 250-pound man charging at me, and I've got to put this ball where I kind of stop my guy's momentum. So you almost throw it behind him kind of on purpose to get him to stop. So he does that.
Yeah.
And that's a touchdown. Again, those are the kinds of plays that when you're playing really well, you're making those throws, and when you're not, those are interceptions. So very different year from DJ last year compared to his first 3 years in the league. I do think there's it's interesting that the Giants, they declined his 5th-year option for the season last year. He has this year with Daboll, and then they signed him to the $40 million contract. So he has to be good. I mean, and I'm talking like he has to be better than he was last season to make that contract stand up. And from a talent perspective, I don't know if that exists for him. I'm not saying last year was necessarily a ceiling, but I think he had a really good year. So I don't know that he'll be that much better. And now the one question mark is just how much will that different talent around him affect that, and how much more in the tank does Brian Daboll have? So we'll see. Obviously, I think that's a critical question in terms of if they can be better this year or if they're going to be right around that 500 mark again.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could talk me into anything when you show me what you show me. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
the way I see it, it's like I think it truly comes down to how well they're able to get Saquon going if he's there or whatever that case may be. Because I think he's
Saquon's
the main
a big
star of the show.
Offense.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's just a matter of them. Yeah, exactly.
They got to take care of him. And I know no one likes paying running back, but they got to take care of Saquon. That guy's got to be there for Daniel Jones to be the best Daniel Jones he can be.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Let's see. Looking ahead, the next team in the division we're taking a peek at is going to be the Commanders, the Washington, whatever team you want to call them. They went 8-8 last year. They finished last in the division. It would mean they missed the playoffs.
Key losses. Number 1, this may not be a key loss depending on who you are. Daniel Snyder selling the team. Just putting that out there. They'll have new ownership.
You threw me for a loop. I was like, I don't see that guy's name on the list.
Yeah. New ownership. He'll be selling the team. It's not quite all the way through and approved and everything like that, but we'll see what new ownership looks like. I know Washington fans are excited, but this is also the owner of the Sixers. So, and we've seen kind of how their process has gone.
Fall short every year.
Yeah. So certainly it's going to be better than ownership under Daniel Snyder. He was arguably like one of the worst owners in professional sports. So I'm sure this will be better. And I've seen every Washington Commander fan I know is excited.
Yep.
So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But in terms of on the field, the on-field product, they lost Taylor Heineke, who was their starting quarterback for a good chunk of the year. They lost linebacker Cole Holcomb. They lost their other quarterback for the majority of the year, Carson Wentz. So they lost the 2 guys who kind of each started basically half the year for them.
Yep.
And then they lost some production from the running back room and J.D. McKissick. They added Andrew Wiley, who certainly is a big addition at the right tackle spot. They also added quarterback Jacoby Brissett to be their backup quarterback. Center Nick Gates from those New York Giants. And then linebacker Cody Barton. In the draft, they drafted Emmanuel Forbes, who I thought was a little high for him, but I do like him. He should lock down one of the starting corner spots for them. They drafted safety Jartavius Martin and then center Ricky Stromberg. So we'll see if those additions can pay off for them. I was not as big a fan of their draft as some of the other teams, especially in their division. So.
Like I said, I don't know much about either of those dudes, especially in the defensive area. But, I mean, that is an area I talked about when we were doing our review, that they always seem to have some good players back there, So I'm sure one of those will pan out for them. Let's see, in the management, they got their general manager being Martin Mayhew. We're having The NFC East has some wild names out there, huh?
Martin Mayhew, been in the game a long time. Has only been their GM for like the last, I think it's year 3 for him or year 2 maybe, but been in the game a long time. Like mad respect to Martin Mayhew, good dude.
Let's see, their head coach, we got Ron Rivera. Let's see, their offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy. Yeah, I mean, he just got there from Kansas City, I guess.
Hmm.
Let's see, their D coordinator is going to be Jack Del Rio.
Yep. Yeah, Rivera maintains some continuity in the staff and then adds Bieniemy to run the offense for him. Should be interesting. I really do hope Bieniemy has some success with them this year. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out.
Sure.
Looking at their projected starters up front, I will just say it now. Their offensive line is kind of a tough group. Not a big fan of everything they've got going on up front. They added some in free agency with Nick Gates and Andrew Wiley, which does help. But just left to right, at left tackle, they got Charles Leno Jr., left guard Andrew Norwell, center Nick Gates, right guard Sam Cosmi, and right tackle Andrew Wiley. The thing that I'm most nervous for this Washington front line, they don't have a lot of depth. If any of these guys get hurt, they're really in trouble. That would just be my first glance opinion. And injuries on the offensive line happen. So it's very unlikely they're going to make it through the whole year without one of these guys getting hurt. And they don't have a lot of depth that makes me feel good about them being able to withstand any kind of injury up front. So that's one thing that's unnerving. The skill positions, they got Terry McLaurin, one of the best receivers in football. Logan Thomas at tight end. Curtis Samuel at the slot. Jahan Dotson, and then also Diami Brown outside at the Z. Quarterback Sam Howell, and then Jacoby Brissett mentoring him. And then at running back, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. Again, similar to like what they've got going up front, I think the skill positions, they have some really dynamic players like McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. I like those guys.
Yeah.
But again, they don't have a lot of depth. Logan Thomas is hurt very often. Who's going to be playing tight end when Logan Thomas gets hurt? You know what I mean? It's things like that make me nervous. I like the duo of Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. I do like that running back room. Sam Howell, nice. Very, very much so an unknown at the quarterback position. He got to play that one game last year. And then obviously Brissett is a wouldn't say proven veteran, but the guy has been competent when he's gotten starts. You know what I mean? So they at least have that there. Defensively, the Commanders boast like one of the best groups up front in terms of their starting four. Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, all 4 first-round picks, all 4 studs. Now, the problem is, again, the depth. Outside of those 4 guys, they don't have a lot of rotational D linemen that I feel good about. Like that, I'm not feeling like there's a drop-off when those guys are not on the field, which is a problem. At linebacker, they have Jamon Davis, Cody Barton, and then they also have Kaliki Hudson and David Mayo. They do have linebacker depth. I do like their quad group of linebackers. At the corner, slot corner, I got Jartavius Martin. Then at the corner spots, Emmanuel Forbes and Kendall Fuller should be the starters. I like that duo a lot. And then Benjamin St. Juste and Cam Dantzler as their backups. Again, also like those guys. So I actually like their corner room. And then at safety, Cameron Curl, and at the free, Derek Forrest, and then also the kid that they drafted, Jartavius Martin. Or I think Jartavius Martin will actually play in the slot more for them, but could fill a role at safety when needed. So their secondary is pretty good. There's a little more depth there too. Same thing in the linebacker room. Up front, very talented, really good, just not as much depth. In totality, this Commanders team feels like it lacks depth across the board, which could be a real problem down the road. But they do have some big names, some big name talent, especially on that D line. So
yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, Chase Young, I'm glad to. I shouldn't say I'm glad to see him back. I'm gonna look forward to watching him play because he was definitely a key guy a couple years back before he got injured.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so looking at their schedule this year, they start off against the Cardinals at home, and then they play the boys in Denver in Mile High week 2 they're playing the Broncos week 2. Sorry. Week 3 they're playing the Bills at home. That's going to be tough. Week 4, the Eagles on the road. First divisional game of their schedule. That's going to be tough. Let's see. They got the Bears on a Thursday night game. So they only got 2 primetime games, looking at it now. One of them both on Thursdays. So week 5 is their first one against the Bears. Then they go on the road for a couple weeks versus the Falcons and then the Giants. And then they're at home against the Eagles. So they got back-to-back divisional games right there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Week 9, they're playing in Gillette Stadium. So they're playing the Patriots. And then they travel across the country to go play the Seahawks. That's tough.
Yeah.
See, week 11, they got the Giants at home. And then they got their other Thursday night game being the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. That's going to be a good one. Gotta love those Cowboys unis on Thanksgiving, huh?
Yeah.
And then week 13, they got the Dolphins at home. Then they finally get their bye week 14. Let's see, week 15 and 16, they're on the road. They play the Rams. So they go travel out to LA, and then they go and play in Jersey versus the Jets. And then they got their last 2 games at home. They're going to be versus the Niners and versus the Cowboys. That's unfortunate right there, too.
Yeah. I know you're going to ask me, so I'll just put it out there right now before I even talk about this schedule. I think this Commanders are going to struggle this year.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I really like Ron Rivera.
True.
I like Martin Mayhew. I like Eric Bieniemy. I think there's some really good players on this team, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young. But I think this schedule is brutal. I think they lack depth. I don't feel great about the quarterback position. I don't feel great about their O-line. And there's got to be a team that's not very good. And it feels like Washington could be one of those teams that's just not very good this year and ends up putting themselves in position to draft a quarterback in the top 3 in the draft next year.
Tanking? And then they get that new management coming in.
I'm not saying tanking,
but
making. Okay,
I think you got their script, bro.
There is an element though to a new owner wanting to get his own people in there, and that's just you see it in every sport. I mean, look at what just happened in Phoenix with the Phoenix Suns. Yeah. New owner, they instantly make a trade for Kevin Durant, like literally before the ink is dry on this guy being the owner. They make that trade for KD. They don't win in the playoffs. He gets the head coach out of there, and he's going to bring in his own guy. I mean, that's just how it goes. Yeah. So the reality is Washington could have a tough start. All of a sudden, the owner's looking around and saying, you know what? Drake May's pretty good. Caleb Williams is pretty good. Let's fire our head coach and let's be bad, finish out the year, and draft one of those guys. And I just think that's a real scenario for Washington. It makes sense, even though I do think there's some real talent. And I really like Ron Rivera. I like Eric Bieniemy. I think those guys, I like Martin Mayhew, their GM. I think those guys are good at their job. I just think right now they've all inherited what was kind of a dumpster fire of a franchise for a long time under Daniel Snyder. There's a lot wrong. I mean, the fact that Ron Rivera had his team win the division in 2020 is a testament to how good a coach he is, right? So now they could totally shock me because I don't know how they went 8-1 last year because their roster is fairly similar. I mean, and they didn't even have Chase Young last year, so theoretically they should be better. But I just I don't see it. I think that they maybe got. I'm not going to say lucky last year, but they caught the right breaks in certain games. Were able to win some close ones, and I think this year there's some real regression, and to the point where, especially early, you have that regression early, and then you have the tough schedule, and then new management, all that stuff, new ownership. A
lot of noise in Washington for sure.
Yeah. So looking at the schedule, though, I mean, they have a stretch between weeks 8 and 13 before they get on their bye. That I honestly think they could go 0-6. Like seriously. Ooh. They play road games at the Patriots, the Seahawks, and the Cowboys. They get home games against the Eagles, the Giants, and Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
That's 3 divisional games. 5 of 6 are playoff teams from last year, and the 6th team is the Pats, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if they go 0-6 in that stretch. Seriously, I really do. I think all 6 of those teams are competing for playoff spots this year, and those divisional games are tough. Playing the Cowboys on Thanksgiving is going to be brutal. Having to go all the way out to, having to go to Gillette and then fly all the way out to Seattle, and then come back home, against New York. Like, I just think I just think that's a tough stretch, and I wouldn't be shocked if they go 0-6 there. And if they're 0-6 there, then in the rest of their schedule they're 3-8. Yeah, I just think that's it's probably about right. I think their easiest stretch is the stretch they have coming out of the gate, weeks 1 through 6, playing the Eagles and the Bills during the stretch. So those are 2 tough games. But the other teams here are the Cardinals, the Broncos, the Bears, and the Falcons. I think, maybe they could go 3-3 or 2-4, at least 1-5.
Yeah, true.
I think 3-3 out of that stretch with the way this team looks would probably be good.
Yeah.
And if you go 3-3 in that stretch, but I just think the rest of their schedule is pretty tough. You look at even coming out of the bye, they got to go to LA, then to New York, then they get the Niners and Cowboys at home. Like I said, I could see them finishing the year with like a legitimate 10 straight losses, because they could finish that 6-week stretch before the bye with 6 losses, and then those last 4 games, maybe the easiest one's probably at the Rams. You got to go fly that all the way to the West Coast and make that West Coast trip. That's not easy.
True.
I could see them finishing seriously with like 10 straight losses. So it's a brutal schedule, dude. It's not an easy schedule, and with this team and a young quarterback and just so much change in the ownership and all that stuff, I think it's going to be a tough year in Washington. I'm sorry, Commanders fans.
It's okay. I'll pick up the slack for them. I think you guys do, just like I said it with the Giants, I think you guys do similar to what you did the year before. I have them going 7-10. But I'm telling you, man, you could talk me in anything. After you do talk about all the noise in Washington, I was like, maybe they do lose a couple more than I have them. But I was 7-10. Like you said, the beginning of their schedule is probably where they get the most wins out of the whole thing, right? And then that ending, I think, alone is brutal. Not to mention in the in-betweens where you've mentioned their tough stretches. They got, 4 of those on the road, all in tough places. Like, I don't know. The way I see it, though, their biggest question is going to be that quarterback. And so I was going to ask you, do you think that either Sam Howell is going to be the starter, or if bringing in Jacoby Brissett will be a starter in that in their like QB room, or do you think they even have a chance to compete in the NFL with either of those dudes that they have now, or do they need something new?
Well, I look at Washington. Sam Howell, we don't have a lot. That guy was really good at North Carolina, very heralded, and then kind of had that tough senior year. He came back for his senior year, and it was he didn't have the same skill guys around him that he had the first couple years at North Carolina, and it really diminished his draft stock. He ends up being,
sounds like someone else we know too.
I think he ended up being a 5th round pick for Washington. Sat majority of the year, watched Tyler Heineke and Carson Wentz make fantastic plays and mistakes. It's interesting. Taylor Heineke and Wentz are almost like the exact same quarterback, where they will make some throws where you're like, man, this guy has got a ceiling. He's got a ceiling that is up there. And then he makes some throws where you're like, and it's just both those guys were so similar. And so they were really, truly old school gunslinger. Like, I'm going to make some throws that are going to be really good because I fit it in a window as I trust my arm. And then I'm going to make some throws that are just absolutely bad because I trust my arm. And he watched that all year and then got to play in week 18. And it was an up and down start for him. We'll watch a little bit of film about it, but it was an up and down start for him. Saw some good things, saw some bad things. Really, a lot of the reasons why he was a 5th round pick showed up. The talent is there. Some of the decision making is tough. And so we'll look at that. But Then you look at Jacoby Brissett. I mean, he has 48 career starts. He has 3 years where he started 11-plus games.
Oh, no.
And 2 in India, I believe, and then 1 with the Browns last year.
Yeah.
And in those starts, in those years, he went 43 touchdowns to 19 interceptions, 61% career completions. So Jacoby Brissett, I think, is competent. I think he's a guy who can come in and win you games if you need him to play 5 games.
Yeah.
I think if you're asking him to start over an entire season and to be like your starting quarterback going forward, I think that's where it gets tough because I just think he's got a ceiling that doesn't take your team over the top consistently.
Okay.
He's going to be a good decision maker. He's going to run your offense efficiently, but I hate to use that. Like, it became such an overused term for a long time, but like that game manager quarterback, that's kind of I think what Jacoby does. And yet he even has some plays here and there where he takes some chances that I'm like, and he makes some good throws and then not some good ones. So he's got a little bit of that inconsistency in his game too. But looking at Sam Howell last year, kind of want to evaluate that Week 18 start he had against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are playing their guys defensively. So this is a good test, a legitimate look. This is him in their first drive in the red zone, right? Identifies the one-on-one that he gets and gets the ball into Terry McLaurin's hands, right? Lets him go score. I mean, so you'll see it here. This is Terry McLaurin in the slot. He knows he's got the under route with the corner that's going to take everything out on this side with the tight end. Yeah. And he's going to run the back to the flat, again, taking the linebacker out of there. So now it creates a true one-on-one, even though it's zone coverage, right? And he's just going to run away from that underneath defender and score. It's a really good concept, honestly, really good design. And Howell does a good job of understanding where he needs to get that guy the ball and getting him the ball and letting him go score. If they're going to have success, and I think Eric Bieniemy, that's the one thing that I feel good about. I do think Eric Bieniemy can do some of that stuff for them. Then maybe there is some real reason for hope there. So Washington fans, not all despair here. Here's another play, right? It's all out blitz, right? I'm getting pressure on third down. I got to throw it up. I got one-on-one. Now, look, this is very similar to that Daniel Jones play we looked at earlier, right? This is NFL open. My guy has a step on your guy. I got to put it out in front of him. The problem is he throws off that back foot because he's getting pressure in his face, and he way underthrows it. Now, he gets lucky because they get bailed out by a penalty.
Yeah,
so it's not all bad, but, dude, that's Terry McLaurin. If I put it out in front of Terry McLaurin with a step like that, he probably scores, man. So that's where it's like, oh, okay, we question like some of the footwork and then the arm strength of Sam Howell, right? Again, he throws it off that back foot. He can step into that throw. Step in. He throws it off because he throws it off the back foot because he's afraid of getting hit. And he kind of floats it out there, trusting like my arm is strong enough to just put it out in front of him, and instead, it falls short. Now, again, they got the PI. It's not all bad, but there's some stuff about it where it could be better. Here he shows a little bit of mobility, right? Gets out in the run with the little slide. You'll see kind of what the read.
Our guy DJ.
Yeah. You see kind of what he's looking at the read here. Off the play action sprint out. He gets the Micah Parsons running down the line. Right? And he notices that guy is vacated. I could throw the ball to my tight end in the flat, but the backer is running with him, so I feel like I have leverage. I can puncture through right here. And so he does. Smart. That's where it's like, okay, he's got some skill. He's smart. He got some smartness to him, and he's got some skill to go get it done. Now, here we go. Play closer to the red zone. Little play action. Again, I'm going to try and step up. I hold on the ball too long, though. I take a sack.
Yeah.
Now, this is also where I say this O-line is largely the same. I mean, they added Andrew Wiley, which is huge. I do think that's going to help them at that right tackle spot. But for the most part, the rest of these guys are the same. And look at this. He's getting pressure really quick, and he's taking a sack.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm glad he didn't try and do anything crazy and throw the ball while he was in the grasp there. That could have been a disaster, right? But even still, I do worry that some of the O-line is not going to give him the requisite time to make good throws. Now here is another one. He escapes. Gets it to Terry McLaurin. Like, puts it on him. That's a really good throw. On pressure, going to his left, no less. Watch how he. This is actually really good footwork. Watch him. Running to his left. See how he hinges on that foot right there? Yeah, he gets those shoulders square. Follows through, puts it right on Terry McLaurin where he can keep running. Almost leads him into the end zone. Really close. Now, unfortunately, this is the next play. He's feeling himself. He had a great play the play before, little play action fake. Now he thinks, I can get this to my guy running to the corner of the end zone, right? He's going to be able to beat him. The problem is he doesn't see the corner, and really both those guys.
Yeah, it wasn't even high enough to get over that.
That was a really poor decision. He threw it into triple coverage. I mean, throws a pick in the end zone. That's taking points off the board. Those are the kind of things where you're like, oh, okay, don't like that. So Howell is probably going to be up and down, honestly. I mean, and I think their O-line is a big question mark. I think the skill guys beyond Terry McLaurin are a question mark. So I like Eric Bieniemy, but man, this is not that Kansas City offense from a talent perspective. Last year, Washington was 24th in points per game. They only scored 18.9 points a game. I kind of feel like they could be worse this year, just based on what I'm looking at and from the talent perspective. So their defense would have to be unbelievable for them to win a lot of games.
Touchdown a game.
Yeah, so I don't see it right now. I'm not a believer in Washington overall. And I think it's because they just have real big questions on offense, especially at the quarterback position.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, watching these plays, I know we were highlighting Sam Howell, but that line that you mentioned, that left side was something else.
And that left side didn't change.
No.
From last year to this year.
I was gonna give props to them on one play. It was when he threw it off his back foot. But then when we switched views, that left side, that dude blew by him across his face, and then that's why he threw it off the back foot. So I see where you're looking at on that one. So we'll see how that plans out for them because, like you said, they did not get no new additions for that side the line.
Yeah.
Let's see. Looking ahead though, the third team in this division we're gonna take a look at is gonna be the Eagles. Last year they finished at 14-3, which gave them first in the division. Was that first overall in the Eastern Conference? Am I tripping? The NFC?
The Eastern Conference?
Yeah, I'm in basketball mode. My bad.
Yeah, they were the number one seed in the NFC.
Yeah. In the Eastern Conference. Come on. Hey, they're just bleeding together right now. But so 14-3 last year. Like I said, first in the NFC overall, first in their division as well. And then their finish was in the Super Bowl, losing to the Chiefs, as we all seen.
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to say, I didn't have enough room on this graphic to include all the guys they lost from that Super Bowl team.
Uh-huh.
So I had to write notes. So I'll just read these guys off.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it may take me a minute. By my count, they lost 13 key players, either starters or rotational players, regularly playing players from that Super Bowl team. So here we go. The biggest one, honestly, D-tackle Javon Hargrave going to the Niners, signed for big money. Congrats to him. Andre Dillard, their kind of swing tackle who could play if Lane Johnson was hurt or Mailata wasn't playing or whatever. He gave them a lot of depth. That's a loss for sure. Starting guard Isaac Siamalu, safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, linebacker TJ Edwards, running back Miles Sanders, safety Marcus Epps, edge player Robert Quinn, linebacker Kaiser White, quarterback Gardner Minshew, receiver Zach Pascal, D-line Ndamukong Suh, D-line Linval Joseph. Now, some of these guys, Sue and Joseph, are actually both unsigned right now. Potentially could be back if they wanted to. Kind of older guys who could either retire or wait till after training camp to sign with a team. I actually saw Ndamukong Suh say in an interview that he's just kind of waiting out training camp. He's like, dude, I don't want to do training camp. I'm good.
Yeah,
just want to find the contender.
You're that many years in the league
and sign. Yeah, both those guys
have a run.
Sue and Joseph actually both signed in the season with the Eagles last year, so I could see either one of those guys doing that again, whether it's the Eagles or someone else. But still, guys who played like real snaps for them up front. So it's going to be a task replacing all those guys. Now, the beauty of Howie Roseman and what he has done is they have actually drafted ahead and prepared for this. So they drafted guys in last year's draft to kind of be ready for losing some of these guys, and then also addressed it again in this year's draft as well. So I think they've done a good job of preparing to or already replacing guys on the roster. But losing 13 players in one free agency,
that's wild.
It's hard. It's a lot. It's, continuity is important in the NFL, and losing all those guys, you lose continuity at the very least. So they did add Marcus Mariota to replace Gardner Johnson.
That's actually huge. I didn't know they did that.
At the backup quarterback. I do think Marcus probably can play more like Jalen than Gardner Minshew could. And not just that he's a runner, but like some of the stuff that they like to do with some of the RPO game, he's just more comfortable than I think Gardner Minshew probably was. And Gardner Minshew actually did a really good job, I think, in his couple starts that he played for Hurts. So it was a big loss, but adding Mariota helps that not be so big of a deal.
Yeah, I agree.
DeAndre Swift,
huge.
That's a big addition. They also added Rashad Penny at the running back spot as well.
Yeah, I didn't.
And then they added safety Terrell Edmonds. So did a really good job actually addressing some of these things in free agency and with Swift's case a trade to kind of plug some of those holes. So I do feel like they've done a very good job, whether it was last year's draft, this year's free agency, or this year's draft with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, Sidney Brown. They drafted some really good players. They added some really good players in free agency. So they have replaced a lot of those guys. But again, continuity, that's all. Continuity is an issue for them.
Yeah, so the management, coaching staff, you briefly touched on this. You talked about Howie Roseman being there in the building at the general manager spot. Head coach Nick Sirianni, who I was hoping would win that coach of the year last year. That's what I thought he would do. Let's see. Offensive coordinator, they got Brian Johnson. And then D coordinator Sean Desi. Here we are.
Desai. You were right the first time.
Desai. I gotta trust my gut.
So this is the other thing: new OC, new DC, right?
Yeah.
So continuity. I mean, and it's so hard. You go to a Super Bowl, like your OC becomes a head coach, your DC becomes a head coach. All these dudes who are up for contracts go get paid. And yet, again, I thought they did a good job addressing some of those needs they had in their staff. Like, I think the guys they brought in are good. I mean, maybe a little different from what they were doing, but really, really good coaches that I like and respect and think could do a good job. It's just, again, continuity will be different. It's going to be a different year for the Eagles. So, which coming off a Super Bowl, you could view that as good or bad, right? Sometimes teams lose that Super Bowl and they can't get it the next year. I mean, look at some of the teams more recently that have. Well, look at some of the teams more recently who have won and lost Super Bowls and then come back the next year. And it's just been tough. The Bucks, the Rams. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. So, maybe sometimes it's a good thing if you have enough turnover that it feels like a new team. But offensively, guy who has not changed, who has been there forever, been there for both their Super Bowl runs in recent memory, Jason Kelce at center. At left guard, on the left side, nothing changes. Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata. I mean, arguably from center to left tackle, the best trio in the league, honestly. Kelce, Dickerson, and Mailata, fantastic. At right guard, a little bit of changes. They lost Isaac Seumalo, so Cam Jurgens steps right in. Been there, though. Has played plenty of snaps for them. Does a really good job. And then at right tackle, Lane Johnson. So, again, this is an example of Cam Jurgens already being on the roster, ready to step in. They also drafted Tyler Steen from Alabama to be that backup to Jurgens and add depth. So, again, they've addressed it twice. One guy already on the roster, adding another guy to replace that guy. Right? At quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and they lost to backup
Gardner Minshew.
and added Marcus Mariota to be the backup. Fantastic. Again, addressed that really well. At running back, I like their running back room. DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and then they still have Kenneth Gainwell. Fantastic. I love that. Their receivers, A.J. Brown comes back, coming off a monster year. Dallas Goedert comes back. Devontae Smith comes back. They kept a lot of continuity here. They did add Alameda Zacchaeus to play in the slot. Also, Quez Watkins is back. They also have Britton Covey, he's a punt returner, but gives them a little depth at receiver. And then also at the backup tight end spot, Jack Stoll. So offensively, they did have largely a very similar group. Small changes at right guard and running back, but everyone else pretty much the same. Defensively, they add, or I should say they bring back Hassan Reddick at the edge. Also have Josh Sweat at the other edge. Brandon Graham comes back for another year. Feels like that guy's been there forever. Derek Barnett is still another guy they have on the edge that they drafted years ago who's been productive. And then they add Nolan Smith to that group. Again, this is an example to me of they know Brandon Graham probably nearing retirement. It's possible Josh Sweat or Derek Barnett could leave soon. They draft Nolan Smith this year to address a need that will likely come up next year. I just think Howie Roseman has done such a good job, and I'm people who are not Eagles fans probably are not going to enjoy this right now because I'm kind of giving him his just due. But I mean, really, you look at it on the defensive line, they bring back Fletcher Cox, another guy who's just been there forever, fantastic vet up front. They also add the big draft pick Jalen Carter, and then they also had Jordan Davis, who they drafted last year. Again, an example of drafting Davis and Carter, preparing for the loss of Javon Hargrave and the potential loss of Sue and Linval Joseph as rotational players. Maybe they bring one of those guys back now, and they have a really good rotation up front. Also, in the linebacker core, they have Nakobe Dean at Mike, another example of drafting a guy, letting him sit for a year. You lose those backers up front. Nakobe Dean slides right in, should be very good. Now, more of an unknown at the will linebacker spot, Nicholas Morrow. That may be a tougher one for them in terms of the production they'll get from him compared to what they were getting before. Avonte Maddox comes back as the slot corner. And then at the corners, they have Darius Slay and James Bradbury back for another year. They add Greedy Williams in free agency and Keely Ringo in the draft to be their backup corners. Two guys I like. At safety, bring in Terrell Edmonds. Reed Blankenship is a guy who played plenty of snaps for them last year. So again, a guy who's on the roster. And then they drafted Sidney Brown again. And so I don't know how Howie Roseman has done this with, he seems to have the perfect amount of picks to just replace the guys that leave and replacing them a year early or right when he needs to. I mean, whatever. But you know how I like Sidney Brown a lot. So that's another guy that I think potentially play real snaps for them. So they have
out of Illinois.
Yeah. They have a pretty deep roster considering losing 13 guys in free agency, and yet still feels like they're pretty deep. I like them.
Yeah, no, it's just crazy. Repeating all those names, it's like, man, this team is monsters. Yeah. Just thinking about everyone on the team has me excited to watch these dudes because they're going to ball. But as we mentioned with the other two teams, the schedule that they got, it's a tough one. So
it is tough.
That first, they go on the road, first game out the gate. They go to play Bill Belichick in New England. Then they're at home Thursday night against the Vikings. That could be fun. I like that. See, week 3, they're playing the Bucks on a Monday night game. I'm sorry, Bucks fans. That's going to be a pain. Week 4, they're at home versus the Commanders. So they got their first divisional game.
This is kind of the easy stretch of their schedule, honestly.
And then, let's see, they got 2 weeks right here on the road. They go to L.A. I would love to see that. Hopefully that happens. And then they played the Jets in New York. Or I guess Jersey. I do that every time. They're in New York, but they're not in New York. And then, so they get a Sunday night game, week 7 versus the Dolphins. And then so their first 2 divisional games are against the Commanders. Week 8, they play them again on the road this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they play the Cowboys at home, which leads them to their bye in week 10. I think that's a solid bye, right? Kind of in the middle. That's always good.
I think their schedule is it's very balanced. So even though it's kind of tough they do have a fairly balanced schedule in terms of where they get to buy in the right spot and whatnot. So yeah.
And then coming off their bye, they play the Chiefs. So we get that rematch of the Super Bowl on a Monday night game. And I guess surprisingly enough, the Chiefs also come off their bye that week. So a little bit, two teams well prepared for each other that they didn't just see, in February. And then week 12, they get a couple home games. Week 12, week 13, they play the Bills, and then they play the Niners. Two fun games that I look forward to. Actually, I guess those three are all going to be. You know what? Four. We can include the Cowboys. That's gonna be a great span of games for the Eagles. It's gonna be tough, but it's gonna be fun to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, week 14, they're playing the Cowboys
It's a tough stretch
in Dallas on a Sunday night. Let's see. Week 15, also on the road again. They travel to Seattle. That long distance travel across the country. Unfortunately for all these teams, and then 2 out of their last 3 are going to be versus the Giants. They got Monday night, week 16 against the Giants, also a Christmas game. So we got we
three Christmas games like we did
3?
last year. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. All on Monday night too, so it's going to be a long, long day.
Yeah, it's just like we had this year where they have like a early afternoon, mid-afternoon, early evening, and then evening.
Dope. Yeah, that's going to be a good day. Week 17, they're at home versus the Cardinals, and then their last game, they travel to Jersey. I'm going to get it right the first time. And they play the Giants closing out the season.
Yeah, so like I said, I think the Eagles' schedule is well constructed for them. In terms of the tough stretch, I mean, it's pretty easy to see. I mentioned it before when we talked about the schedule itself, when we looked at what stood out. This is the toughest stretch that I think anyone has on any schedule. I mean, I really do. I think it's one of the toughest stretches I can pick out from anyone's schedule. Coming off their bye at the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, and oh, by the way, they don't even have a rest advantage because the Chiefs are also coming off their bye. Versus the Bills at home, versus the 49ers at home, at the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, at the Seahawks, and then versus the Giants on Christmas Day. That is a brutal stretch of 6 games. I mean, seriously brutal. You're talking about three contenders coming out of the bye, like 3 true Super Bowl contenders in a row. 2 like maybe dark horse contenders in the Cowboys and Seahawks, and then a divisional opponent that's always proven to be scrappy for you on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Seriously, tough. I mean, it doesn't really, I don't think anyone has a tougher stretch than that 6 games right there. That's tough. And they're going to probably need to go, I could see them going 3-3. And I kind of think that's what they'll do, about 3-3. But if they want to compete for the number 1 seed in the NFC, they probably have to go 4-2 in that stretch. So really tough. And then their easy stretch, they get that first 5 games. They really get to ease into the schedule. I mean, you get to play road games at the Pats, Bucks, and Rams, home games against the Vikings and Commanders. Really could see them starting, 5-0, 4-1 in that stretch. Feels like that's the only thing that's maybe tough in that stretch is just the fact that you got to go to LA. You got to go to Gillette to open the year and then to LA in terms of the travel for that stuff. And then having to play at New England is always kind of hard. But I think, they should wipe the Bucks and the Commanders. And honestly, I think they've owned the Vikings in recent years too. So I wouldn't be shocked if they just kind of those 3 games in a row just smoke those 3 teams. So I could easily see them starting out 5-0, just coming right out of the gate. So, which if they do, that really helps them kind of going into that tough stretch out after the bye. So,
yeah, no, we both agreed on this one, which is rare to see so far. So 12-5 for their whole schedule. I think it all comes down to those. Was it 5 games after the bye? Where it's just a matter of what can they win those? Can they minimize the losses to only 3, or if it slips a couple times? So we'll see. It's gonna be a fun stretch though, right there to watch on TV because those are all fun games for sure.
Yeah, I think I see them being about 7-2 going into the bye, maybe 5-3 after the bye, something like that.
I feel
Based
that.
on how their schedule plays out, and I see them sitting at about 12-5. I do think it's tough to rebound from a Super Bowl, especially when you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
This division is very good. The NFC West is very good. The AFC East is very good in terms of the schedule that they have to play. Schedule's harder. They're going to have to deal with some new bodies in there, some turnover in some key positions, some turnover at the OC and DC positions, that kind of thing. But in general, this team is so talented and has so much going for it that I think that I just can't imagine them being not a playoff team. And I really think they're talented enough and have enough pedigree that, like I said, I think they're 12-5 because it's a rough schedule. Like if I was really, really, 14-3 is a high bar. So I think they regress a couple games, but not because I think this team isn't good, but I just think all of those factors are kind of going against them. And so 12-5 feels right.
We brought it. Yeah. So my question for the Eagles was going to be, how do you think their defense is going to end up looking compared to what they have been in the last year with all those key losses and newer additions?
Well, I really had to deep dive this one a little bit just because it's less about, I think, their personnel and their players and more about who's going to be calling the defense.
Okay.
So
the coach.
Yeah, I looked at Sean Desai and what he's done as a defensive coordinator. He became the Bears DC in 2021. And then after Matt Nagy was fired and they got a new staff, he joined the Seahawks staff and they called him like the defensive associate head coach or something like that, or like head coach of defense. He was the defensive coordinator in Seattle, right? Like that's what he did.
They just gave him a fancy title.
Yeah, they gave him a little more title, maybe paid him more. I don't know. But just looking at both those defenses, so the 2021 Bears, 2022 Seahawks, both those defenses were good in the red zone, averaging around 55% touchdown conversion in the red zone, which is pretty good. If you're at like 50%, you're really doing some good stuff in the NFL. The Bears were 13th the year he was there, and then the Seahawks not quite as good. They were 23rd, but the conversion percentage was pretty close. So Philly was really bad here in 2021. They were much better in 2022. So in 2021 under their DC, Jonathan Gannon, they were 66% touchdown percentage in the red zone, and then last year 55. So a lot more similar to what. Yeah, a lot more similar to what Desai was doing. But then the other thing that I looked up was I was just kind of looking at structures of these two defenses. They're actually structured very similarly. You're going to get odd fronts in terms of like a three-man front. You'll see it here. I mean, you can kind of see just how they're lined up here. They've got a three-man front with then a stand-up guy who's coming down. But you'll see a lot more guys closer to the line of scrimmage with what Desai is going to do than what Jonathan Gannon did. I'm going to explain why that's important here in a second. But structurally, like positionally and how they, you're going to see more odd fronts, too high safety looks, that kind of thing, at least pre-snap. So it's a lot more akin. It's kind of similar to some of the stuff I was showing you with what Fangio is going to be doing in Miami. But philosophically, it does feel like Desai and Gannon are very different. And this is where I would say Philly fans may be excited about this, actually. So Chicago's 2021 defense, they gave up the 7th highest explosive run rate and 9th highest explosive pass rate. So they're giving up about 6 explosive plays a game. And generally we define like an explosive pass as like a pass of 20-plus yards and a run of 12-plus yards.
Okay.
So when you're giving up big plays, essentially.
Yeah.
Now, Philly fans may not be excited to hear like, oh, Desai's defenses give up big plays. Now, hold on. I'll get to it. Philly's defense, on the other hand, gave up like the 5th least explosive plays in run and least in pass. So they were giving up only about 5 explosive plays a game. So what Philly's defense under Jonathan Gannon did, they played a lot of too high shells and really stuck in that too high and forced teams to run the ball. They said, hey, we're not going to let you throw. You're going to run the football. So they didn't give up explosive pass play, right? They didn't give up explosive plays in general because they were just safe. I mean, everything was kind of safe. Keep everything in front of us. Don't give up big plays. Yeah. And then we'll be good in the red zone. Well, the problem in 2021 is they weren't good in the red zone, whereas in 2022, they were much better. So you saw their defense was much better. Sean Desai's philosophy is they're going to be more aggressive. And even when they give up big plays, they'll be really good in the red zone. And then, but they're also going to create big plays because they're more aggressive, right? So the Eagles ranked 24th in run in yards per attempt last season, whereas these Bears and Seahawks defenses were much better against the run. So I do think there's some interesting differences. So this is some clips of this Bears defense that Desai had in 2021. It's a series of plays against the Raiders, and then we'll look at a series of plays that the Eagles had last year. So this defense, more bodies near the line of scrimmage, going to be much better against the run. Right? They're more aggressive. You can see he's going to blitz some guys some more. He's going to play tighter coverage, not sit in so many too high shells. He'll maybe start with a too high look, but then rotate over. You see all the bodies in the middle of the field creating that incompletion. And you'll see kind of they rotated to one high off the too high look, and that safety was able to impact this play. Almost comes up with the pick there. All right, and now this is 3rd and 10. Look at how many guys are near the line of scrimmage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're playing with 9 bodies basically on the line of scrimmage, whether they're covering or pressuring, right? But they're bringing the house. Oh, wait. No, they're not. They're only going to bring 4. They're going to drop out. So Desai loves to disguise stuff, right? He loves to not show his hand. And so they drop out, force a tough look, make the check down happen, get off the field on 3rd down. So you'll see, I think the beauty of this for Desai, he has the personnel to run the same stuff. Look, this is a similar setup, right? The 3-man front with a stand-up, 2 true backers, a nickel, 4 DBs, right? 2 high look. Oh, they walk it down into 1 high. You can get into that, right? Now, again, less bodies near the line of scrimmage for the Eagles, right? This is only a 6-man box with the 7th guy walking up late with the safety, but really 7-man box. Not as many guys near the line of scrimmage. The Lions are able to run the football on them, right? That was one thing that really plagued the Eagles last year. They were not very good against the run. They sat back in a lot of those too high shells, and even on this one, they bring up the 7th defender in the box. But their D-line is really good, but it's very penetrating, so it creates a lot of open gaps. And so if you don't have other guys in the near the line of scrimmage to be able to fill those gaps, it can be tough. Again, here's another play in the series. They run the football. Jamal Williams gashes them, right? And the Eagles defense
intentionally put in that play with Swift right before that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here you go. Here's another one. A little short motion. Again, the Lions were running the football.
Yeah.
Getting them in the red zone here. So even with what they have up front, you'll see this is from the Lions, right? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th blocker, right? So that creates 7 open gaps, right? So you need 7 in the box to make this work. So they're bringing that safety down late, CJ Gardner-Johnson, to try and create the 7th defender in that box to cover all the gaps. Well, now they bring in this receiver. Well, now it creates an 8th gap. So now you got to bring your corner in, or you got to bring your safety down and adjust. And Avonte Maddox, that's just not really what he wants to do right now. Right? He's not trying to go get in there and get grimy. And so now you're kind of over pursued by the backers because they feel this big hole. Now there's cutback lanes and there's D linemen getting up the field. And so the Eagles were a really good defense last year, but these were certain areas they struggled in that I think Sean Desai will focus on and try and create more matchups for them that are favorable. And not to say that he's better than Jonathan Gannon. I just think he's different. they're probably going to give up more explosive plays, but they're also going to be better against the run. So, you kind of, there's always, I kind of don't like the saying, but the old like million different ways to skin a cat, like that whole thing. There's so many different ways. Huh?
I said I've never heard that actually.
Oh yeah, no, that's a common saying that it's kind of a weird one. I don't know why we say it. I got to figure out something different to say. But again, here you go. They're playing against the pass in the red zone. And like I said, they were much better in the red zone last year, not giving up touchdowns. They were stingier down here, but you'll see the Lions eventually take this drive, and their toughness and ability to run the ball, they do eventually score on 4th and goal. This is 3rd and goal right here from the 5-yard line. The Lions are like, hey, we're going to run the ball on these cats.
Yeah.
Almost get in right there.
Working the whole time, yeah.
Yeah, now they get 4th and goal at the 1 after this play, and here you go again. The Lions condense the formation. You create all these extra gaps, so you got to put extra bodies in there. And these guys, they don't want the smoke, right? Like they're not filling that gap right there.
Yeah, no one's in there.
Now, who is that? I think that was Blankenship, maybe. No, Epps.
No.
Epps came up and makes that tackle. Great play by him. Now here's another one though. 4th and goal. They're gonna run this play. Boom, he gets stuffed initially, but then Jamal Williams is gonna go in and score. So it's going to be key for this defense to come up with these stops in the red zone if they are going to give up some bigger plays based on what his track record shows. But I do think he is a guy who will utilize all the talent that they have on this defense, especially the pass rusher positions, and maybe be, I heard a lot of Eagles fans bemoan the fact that they were like too safe and too, too safe on defense in last year. And I think you'll see a little bit more aggression out of Sean Desai than you saw from Gannon. So Eagle fans may like that.
Hopefully he can improve on those things and maybe clean some of it up because they got the squad, no doubt. Let's see. But the last team that we're looking at is going to be America's team. That's what they call them, the Dallas Cowboys. They finished last year at a record of 12-5. Finished second in division, and then they lost in the divisional round. Who'd they end up playing? I don't even remember.
The 49ers.
The Niners. Yeah, that's right. Tough break.
Yeah. This team, not quite the amount of losses that the Eagles had, but they did lose some key or like familiar faces that have been around for a long time. I mean, Dalton Schultz had been the tight end for the last 3 years. Anthony Brown's been a corner there for, it feels like, a long time. Connor McGovern, has been there for a really long time. Ezekiel Elliott, Jason Peters, not so much. They added him last year out of necessity when Tyron Smith went down. But they lost a lot of faces who had been there for quite some time. Now they did go add a couple big names in free agency and trade market. Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. The kind of splashy names that, Jerry Jones loves to add.
Yeah.
I do think both those veteran guys will help them. And so those are 2 big-time additions. In the draft, they drafted Mozzie Smith in the first round and then Schoonmaker on day 2. I mean, and then DeMarvion Overshone, a guy who I really like, also on day 2. A couple Michigan guys there that they like. They seem to like Michigan players in Dallas. And then Overshone could be a really good backer for them. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, so their management they got there, the most famous guy on this that we'll probably see out of the whole thing in this category. They got Jerry Jones at the general manager spot. We got
owner
head coach.
GM.
Yeah, exactly. Head coach Mike McCarthy. I brought him in a couple years back from Green Bay. Let's see. The offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. Is this his first year? Or was he there last year too?
This is his first year because Kellen Moore is gone now.
Gotcha. And then their defensive coordinator would be Dan Quinn.
Yeah, the Cowboys offense should look a little different. Lost some familiar faces up front, at tight end, at running back, and then as well as losing Kellen Moore. Mike McCarthy decided to go in a different direction. Really, it sounds like he's taking control of the offense. with Brian Schottenheimer's help, but I believe Mike McCarthy is calling the plays. So
Okay.
he's kind of going back to a model that worked for him for some time in Green Bay. At center, they added Tyler Biadish. So there you go, Jody.
There you go.
I knew
Yeah.
you would struggle with that one.
Do you know his nationality?
I don't actually.
Okay, I'll look it up.
But I do know his. I researched how to say that name just to be sure that we were saying it right. So I wanted to do him justice. It's Biadish. But at left guard, Tyler Smith, and then also Asim Richards backing him up. Left tackle, Tyron Smith should come back healthy and ready to go. Right guard is staple, Zach Martin, been there for a long time, done a great job. At right tackle, Terrence Steele. At the receiver spots, at the X receiver, Brandon Cooks comes in, should be very helpful in terms of giving them another weapon. At the tight end spot, Luke Schoonmaker and Jake Ferguson are their two tight ends. And the slot, obviously, they've got CeeDee Lamb backing him up. Their really good returner, Kevontae Turpin, play a little on offense in the slot there. And then at the Z position, Michael Gallup getting fully healthy off that ACL, finally feeling like himself, it sounds like. Quarterback, obviously, Dak Prescott, and then Cooper Rush is his backup again. And then at running back, it's a different room this year. Tony Pollard being the lead guy, but then also Deuce Vaughn coming in as his backup, and Malik Davis sort of rounding out the group there. I'm really excited to see Deuce Vaughn. You know I love Deuce Vaughn.
Ooh, it's Polish. Let's sneak that in.
Oh, my guy, Biadish?
Yeah.
Polish. All right. Shout out to Poland.
It's funny because the first answer I saw was American. I was like, all right, well, I got to type in what his last name's from now.
So defensively, at the edge position, going to more of a full-time edge position. They're calling him the Leo position. Micah Parsons. At the nose, Mozzie Smith with Jonathan Hankins backing him up. At the tackle spot, Osa Odegajiwu. I probably butchered that one. And then at the other edge spot, DeMarcus Lawrence. You know, we can't all be perfect with all the names. Sorry, guys, I'm trying.
No, I get it. I was struggling all day.
Yeah. And then at the linebacker spots, there's an interesting battle at that will spot with DeMarvion Overshone and Damone Clark. See who wins that battle. I think Overshone has a really good shot. Then at Mike, Leighton Vander Esch, been there for a little while now. At the nickel spot, Jordan Lewis, another Michigan guy for them, been there for quite some time. I mean, 2017, I think, is when they drafted him. He's been there for forever, it feels like now. At the corner spots, Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore, maybe two of the best ball hawking corners, like tandems in the league at this point. I mean, that's pretty good group right there. Also, Kelvin Joseph adding a little depth. And then at safety, Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson with J-Ron Curse being another guy that could play back there. So some real good depth in the secondary for him. Big names, obviously. Some really good players.
Yeah. Let's see the schedule they got this year. Actually, before I do that, I'm excited to see Overshone. I know we talked about him in our breakdown of the backers. So
Dan Quinn will have fun blitzing him. I'll tell you that.
But yeah, so getting in their schedule, they start off on the road, so they come out with the first divisional game at the start of the season. Sunday night against the Giants. That should be fun. I probably said that when we talked about the Giants. It seems like so long ago already.
feels like Giants Cowboys on Sunday Night Football week 1 is just kind of like standard. Like feels like that's like every year, right?
Yeah, probably. I know it's definitely a good way to go if you want to start off with a Sunday night game being in divisional. That's always a good one to have. Let's see. Week 2, they play the Jets in Dallas, so they stay at home. Then they travel to Arizona. Week 3, that should be, I don't want to say it, but it should be easy. Then they're at home versus the Patriots week 4. And then they got a couple games on the road. Dang, okay, that's unfortunate but I don't want to jump into that. So week 5 they play on the road in the Bay versus the Niners on a Sunday night game. Then they're in LA playing the Chargers on a Monday night game. The Chargers will be coming off a bye that week, and then week 7, the Cowboys have their bye. I feel bad for both those teams. That's early for a bye, in my opinion. But let's see. Week 8, they play the Rams at home. They played there last year, so that makes sense. Week 9, they play the Eagles on the road. So they finally get their second divisional game. Week 9, traveling to Philly. And then they got week 10 versus the Giants at home. Week 11, the Panthers. That's a good one to see out of this whole division. We get to see our guy Bryce Young playing the Cowboys. Let's see. Week 12, they get a couple home games here. Actually, they play week 12 versus the Commanders. We talked about that. It's Thursday night on Thanksgiving. And they got the Seahawks at home, another Thursday night game. And then they play the Eagles on the Sunday night, week 14. And then, let's see, where am I? Week 15, they play the Bills on the road. That's going to be tough. Week 16, the Dolphins on the road. And then they got week 17 versus the Lions on a Sunday night game. That could be fun. And they close out the year on the road versus the Commanders.
So I think a lot of the meat of this Cowboys schedule comes post bye week.
Yeah,
I think they have their sort of quote unquote easy stretch weeks 8 through 13. Just in being that their road games are the Eagles, the Panthers, and then their home games are the Rams, Giants, and Commanders. I think the game at Philly is obviously a tough one, but they have 4 very winnable games outside of those. Getting the Rams where they're going to have the bye week, right? That's a huge advantage at home against the Rams. Then the Giants at the Panthers, the Commanders on Thanksgiving Day. I think that's a stretch where they could realistically go, 4-1.
Easily.
So, and then if they could get that game at Philly, then it's a 5-0 stretch. But realistically, 4-1. Now, I think that gets really hard though weeks 13 through 17. Right after that, they get kind of this easy like cruise stretch 8 through 12. Really tough stretch 13 through 17. So now we'll just go through it. They got to go road games at the Bills, at the Dolphins, home games Seahawks. At the Bills, at the Dolphins, home games against the Seahawks, the Eagles, and the Lions. Those are, I think the Lions are going to be pretty good. I think the Dolphins are competing for a playoff spot. I think the Bills are obviously going to be pretty good. The Eagles and Seahawks could both potentially win their divisions. I mean, this is not a tough game. Plus, they got to do the Tuesday night or Thursday night football, Sunday night football twice in that stretch. So some primetime games. So I think that's a tough stretch. If they could, come out of that thing, 3-3 after going 4-1 in the stretch before that, that could potentially set them up pretty nice to be, in playoff positioning. And then they finish the year at the Commanders. That should really be a win for them, I would say.
Yeah.
So they do have that tough stretch, though, 13 through 17. Not quite as tough as what Philly's going to be facing, but a tough stretch nonetheless. So, and then I think before the bye, it's a pretty balanced schedule. You got tough games at the Niners, at the Chargers, versus the Jets. I think very winnable games versus the Patriots, at the Cardinals, at the Giants. So they should be sitting at, hopefully, if you're a Cowboy fan, you're sitting at like 4-2 going in the bye week. You got a nice like 4-1 stretch coming out of the bye week. You're kind of like sitting around 8-3 going into week 13. And, then you can go 3-3 down the stretch there and feel good about coming out of this thing 11-6. I think that's about right for them. Obviously, you do too.
Yeah. Well, you agreed on this one as well. And so, I mean, I think for them, it's just how well can they dial in all the stuff that they got. I mean, I think Pollard got hurt towards the end of the year. Obviously, they lost Zeke. We could see what they do with Deuce Vaughn back there. Because I don't know. I don't think they use the running back position as much as they do as like a receiver like that. So we'll see. But I guess my question for you, is going to be, how do you think the offense will look with the loss of Zeke and then the addition of Brian Schottenheimer being the OC?
Well, I think in terms of Zeke, they do lose a little bit of attitude to their offense.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that was one thing that they loved Zeke back there on some of those short yardage plays where he just pound that thing up in there. And he seemed to always get those first downs. So I do think you lose a little bit of attitude with losing Zeke. Kellen Moore was, I think, more innovative in some of the stuff he wanted to do. And I would say that there were times where it felt like he and Mike McCarthy maybe disagreed on the direction of how they wanted to do things. I think Mike McCarthy is a little bit more old school, wants to run the football, wants to do things that he knows have worked for him in the past. And Kellen Moore, I think, was wanting to throw the ball a little bit more. And I don't know that either one is completely right. I think that team is really balanced across the board offensively. And so I think you really want to strike that balance. But one of the things the Cowboys really struggled with when I looked at their offense last year, they struggled to put together and maintain drives. Their average time of possession was only 2 minutes and 35 seconds. That was 27th in the league. Now, they scored plenty of points. That's the funny part.
That's true.
They were like a quick strike offense, but if they didn't score on a big play, they struggled to score like on a drive, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So they were averaging a little under 6 plays per possession and 31 yards. So it was like they were going to go get, 2 first downs and then maybe punt on average. So, or they were going to, obviously explode for the big play. So they also threw 18 picks last year, which was 30th in the league. Obviously, you missed Dak for a portion of the season and all that, but Dak struggled in the games he played. He threw way too many picks. Something that they're definitely going to have to try and clean up. So while they produce these explosive plays, they got to be better at maintaining drives, and they got to be better at not turning the ball over. So we'll see. Just this is a game last year. They played the Texans, a game that was way too close that they struggled to win, right? And so when you're looking at that, you're like, hey, you know what? If we want to be a championship contender, we have to be able to maintain drives, and we have to be able to take a team like the Texans and blow them out. And really what they struggled to do and why they didn't just blow this team out was because they were struggling to maintain drives. So you look at, the game here. Here's a 1st and 10. They're going to run the football with Zeke. They get stuffed, right? So 1st and 10 becomes 2nd and long. Or I'm sorry, this is actually Tony Pollard, by the way. Try to run a little split zone coming back. They just don't get any push up front. So now we got 2nd down. Run the football again, a little stretch. Can't get that going either. Don't get any push up front. So now we're in 3rd and long, right? See it from the behind angle. Why are we not getting that push up here? Oof, got penetration. Our center got smoked right away. Gotta be better. Be a dish. Now we got 3rd and long. Right, Zeke's going to try and make a throw. It's going to get tackled short, though. And so now we're punting. And that's the kind of drive that the Cowboys can't afford. They can't afford these like 3 and out. You get three plays, you only gain 7 yards, and now you're punting. Those are the kind of drives they got to eliminate. They got to be able to maintain. They got to be able to get that 1st down. Okay, here's another drive. Starts 1st and 10. They try and run the ball with Zeke. They get nothing. They got to be able to run the football better. I mean, that's clear from these 3 plays. It's like, all right, Houston was winning 2 games last year, 3 games last year, whatever it was. You got to be able to run the football in that team and maintain drives. All right, now we got 2nd and long. Get a little short motion, a little play action. We're going to throw a screen. Oh my gosh, I almost throw a pick. Come on, Dak, right? This play took way too long to develop. I mean, that's going to be what it is. 2 fakes. To throw the screen, they weren't fooled. Zeke's on the ground.
If I'm not mistaken, that right tackle might not even known it was screen. He just started kicking back while his guard crossed his face.
Well, I think what he was trying to do was influence that guy up the field, right? So on screen, you kind of get that guy up the field and then bypass him. The guy they just did a really good job of not taking the bait. Well. Yeah. So now you get 3rd and long again. Dak's going to try and step up. Can I make a play? I don't have it. Check down. We're off the field.
Yeah.
Right. So again, there's many different reasons and plenty of blame to go around for why these drives are happening. It's the offensive line. It's some of the play calling. It's a little bit of like, oh, Dak put that on that guy and let him go get more yards, right? I mean, it's all of those guys. Here we go. Here's another drive. 1st and 10. We run the football. Like, there's a little bit of predictability in this too. Now you're kind of seeing. Now, of course, I'm highlighting the drives where they, they did poorly and the drive stalled and all that. So, kind of cherry picking. Once again, I told everyone before, I'm not hiding the fact that yes, I cherry pick some of the stuff to fit the narrative, but I'm just telling you to trust that I'm also doing. Oh no, messed that up. Trust that I'm also doing the work here, that this is representative of a larger overall narrative. I'm not going to make us go through and watch this whole set of clips again, but just you get the point that they're struggling. There's that next play after the Zeke run, Dak throws a pick, trying to fit a ball into a window. So again, there's plenty of, if you're doing the blame pie, I don't think it's like, oh, it's all Kellen Moore. Now that Kellen Moore's gone, we'll be so much better. I don't think that's it. Nor do I think it's, oh, Dak just throws too many picks. Like, dude, there's a slice of humble pie to go around for everyone, and they all need to be better, including Mike McCarthy, the head coach, who's now going to be taking over the play calling. He's got to be better too, right? They got to be able to maintain drives. They got to be able to run the football. They got to be able to avoid those careless turnovers. Like, all that stuff is real. If they're going to be a legitimate threat in the NFC, that offense has to be better, and not just scoring points on explosive plays, but being able to maintain a drive, because that's important for when you have a lead.
Consistency.
Right? You're winning by a touchdown in the 4th quarter, and we want to run 6 minutes off the clock while scoring, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's important for them. I think obviously this is a big year for Dak, who needs to rebound. And I think for good reason. There's a lot of discourse about him in terms of whether or not he's a top 10 guy or he's not, and whether or not he's an elite quarterback or he's not, right? He's one of those classic sort of in-betweeners.
Yeah.
From a talent perspective, certainly he has all of it, but I can't have a guy who's throwing north of 10 picks pretty consistently and say that guy is like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Until he's not doing that, it's going to be tough. So they're, for them to maintain drives and to keep rolling, Dak's going to have to be better too. So,
yeah, that's for sure. I mean, and the biggest thing with them is everyone's always like, well, they're supposed to be these hot dogs, and they get to the playoffs, and then, where'd they go? They tuck that tail, and not who we thought they were from the season, so we gotta see.
In the words of the late Denny Green, they are who we thought they were.
Yeah, true.
But
before we close out, we got that banger of the week coming from you this week. So what you got for us?
So I'm using my banger of the week this week to shout out a legend, R.I.P. Tina Turner. And old school banger from her. What's Love Got to Do with It?
There you go.
It still goes. It still hits. I was on Apple Music the other day, just like browsing, like what's top. She was in the top 20. That song specifically was in the top 20 in America, just because I think it's being played so much right now to honor her. R.I.P. to a legend, absolute legend, bro. Absolute legend, super talented. Not many like her. And that song, I listened to it because I was like, oh, it's up there. Yeah, that's a good song. And I listened to it and I was like, yeah, this song goes, dude. This song is still really good. It's a timeless classic. So if you've never heard it, shame on you. Go listen to it. And if you've heard it, take it. You probably haven't listened to it in a while. It's not like a song that you're like playing in the car all the time.
Yeah.
But like, definitely go give it a listen again, because it's a revisitable classic for sure. So shout out to Tina Turner.
I was gonna say before you got it rolling, I was gonna say, did it come from your new streaming platform being Max and not HBO anymore?
Yeah,
I don't know if you had to do that update. I did it on on my TV. It's like,
Honestly,
oh, all
nothing
right.
changed. It just
Yeah,
forced me to
no, it
update
didn't.
my app.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, cool. I mean, I get it. They're like rebranding because it's not just HBO
Yeah.
stuff and all that. I get they got to do it, but it was just like, okay, this is weird. But yeah, if you stuck with us this long today, we appreciate you.
As
Hope that you're
always,
learning
yeah.
something. And next week, who we got next week, Joe? What division are we looking at?
We're looking at the AFC South.
Ooh,
So,
Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I'm excited for
yeah,
that.
should be fun.
So we'll be back next week, AFC South. Joe,
What's up?
if people want to be tuned into what we got going, do we have the pod up yet?
Yeah.
Do you have
So go
a
ahead
link
and
for people
like,
to follow?
comment, subscribe. You know, we published all our category last week. I rolled out the episode from last week. It's live. Anyone can watch it. We no longer have the select crew. Everyone go and watch. As I said, subscribe so you could get that notification saying that
Tell
it's
your
up there.
friends.
Yeah, that too. Tell a friend to tell a friend, no doubt. And then for anyone who's new, you could go back and watch anything we've done in the past. It's got like 4 months now, maybe. We're coming up on 4 months worth of content. So yeah, plenty of stuff to go back and watch. You could see what we
Expert
started doing towards
analysis,
the end of the year. Yeah, exactly.
Super
From
Bowl, great episode. The draft stuff, you can
yeah,
go back and watch. What we think of the player your favorite team drafted. All that good stuff.
exactly.
It's all there, and we promise you'll be guaranteed or your money back.
And yeah, we're handing out subscriptions. Those cost us a pretty penny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, of course. Drop some stuff in the comments. Let us know what you want to see besides like what we're talking about your team coming up soon and whatnot. What do you want to hear from us? That
Yeah.
could help us out.
Tell us if
Help
you
you
think we
out.
suck. Tell
Yeah,
us
that's
any of
honest
it is
feedback.
welcome.
Yeah, for
No
sure.
publicity is bad publicity. We'll take it all.
Also true. Yeah, but more importantly, one of our favorite parts of the show, our guy Ray taking us out.